everyone, welcome back to my channel, and I'm working on another mixed media collage, and today we are working on an 8" by 8" gallery wrapped canvas that comes pre-primed. I got this one at Michael's. First thing I'm doing here is I'm going to cover basically the entire canvas with different types of paper, and I typically use book pages and music pages like I've got here. But I wanted to change it up a little bit today. I actually found an old day planner that I was about to throw in the trash when I thought, you know what, I can rip that up and put it in a collage. So that's what I did there. And what I'm doing right now is just getting a base layer down. I don't even know at this point what I'm going to put on top, but I wanted to have a nice base down. And this is a good kind of starting point for you if you don't really know what you want to do, but you have some time to make some art. Just get started. Get some papers. If you are into jelly printing, which I am, get some of your old gel prints and magazines, whatever you have laying around, and just start gluing things down, because sometimes starting out with a plain blank canvas can be a little intimidating, or your mind just starts working too much. I know I go into analysis paralysis personally a lot, and this is a way to kind of avoid that and just get something started. So what I'm using here to glue everything down is Artist's Loft Matte Gel Medium. I also use the Liquitex brand. I like both of them. I just happened to have a coupon for Michael's, so I bought the Artist's Loft this time, and it works exactly the same. I've seen really no difference there. What I like to do is put a layer of the adhesive down first, and then you'll see here I'm putting another coat on top, and that just makes sure that everything is good and secured, because you don't want to have anything peeling up. Now I will put a finishing spray on at the end, but you do want to make sure that this is down on the surface as well as you can possibly get it there. So in addition to the book pages and the planner pages, I have some gel prints that I have collected. These are actually the pull-off sheets of some of my ransom note lettering pages. If you've seen any of my previous videos, I'll link one at the end here that shows that process. But the first time I did them, I noticed that these little squares formed on my pull-off sheets, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I started actually pulling off on a piece of tissue paper so that I could use them in my collage. That's really what I prefer to use with my collages, because it just kind of melts into the background. And what happened here, you can't really tell too well on the video, or maybe you'll be able to, but all those little squares that were left as blank tissue paper, you can see everything that's underneath those. So it gives another kind of dynamic or another layer to the piece. And I really like working in layers. I think it makes everything much more interesting. So an element that I added this time that I typically don't is just some words straight out of magazines. I typically don't like to use images or anything straight out of a magazine. I like most of my collage paper to either be book pages or handmade, just a personal preference. But I thought, you know, just for something different, I'm going to just cut out some words or phrases, not necessarily any particular reasoning behind what I chose other than maybe the font size or the font type. That little piece in the middle there just happens to say a memory, which I thought was cool. And so I went ahead and glued that down in the same manner, and I'm just going in now and kind of filling up the whole canvas. This is another sheet of collage paper here that I made on a previous video, and I can link that one for you at the end too if you're interested in learning how I make some of these papers. I typically make a lot of black and white because I think it's a nice neutral background, or it's a nice way to add some contrast to a piece. I like my color to be more applied in a paint form, but again, there's no right or wrong here. It's just whatever you choose. And in that manner too, I should mention here that I am an intuitive artist, which means that I don't particularly plan a lot of my pieces out. I might start with some basic idea of some kind of image or a color or maybe a pattern, but I like to just start working and see where the piece takes me. I've always worked that way, and that's what works for me. So I put quite a few layers on there, and you want to make sure that that is dried pretty well before you start the next layer. Otherwise, things can either get messy or you might not get a result that you want. So after several hours of dry time, I decided to go in with some paint. And this is I believe that's Titan Buff that I'm using there. And you're probably thinking, okay, why did you just cover everything up that you spent all of that time putting down? But I really didn't, because what's happening here is I went in with that Titan Buff and also with some titanium white, and now I'm using different tools to scrape some of that paint off. And the reason for that is I was looking for a much more antiqued, kind of old, worn look, and that's what this is doing for me here. So I'm using my color shaper to just go in and scrape some of that away. I also used an old credit card to get some of it, but that was leaving lines that I didn't particularly want there. So I just went in with the color scraper and got off what I could. And now I'm taking a spray bottle full of water. And I put a lot of water in there. You'll be able to see in a minute there how much water is laying on the table. But in doing that, it loosened up a lot of that paint, and now I'm just taking a roll of paper towels, and I'm not wiping, I'm just kind of dabbing, and you can see that the colors that I chose along with the black and white background gives it a nice antique look. And that's exactly what I was going for there. So I'm going in with a little more paint, and I decided to use the pale pink color that, if you've seen any of my videos, you know that I'm kind of obsessed with at the moment. I'll get the exact color for you and it'll be in the description. I have a list of commonly used items down in the description for you if you're interested in checking any of that out. That blushy pink color added just a little bit more of like an antique rose kind of look, and I think it played really nicely with the different tones of the black and white in the background, as well as the buff and the white that I applied to the top. So here I'm doing a little bit of gel printing, and I'm sure you've seen some of my other videos that I'm doing right now, the flowers. This is a technique that I've been doing, and I really love the way that it works. I love the way that it turns out, and I've found a million uses for these. I have several videos using these, and there will probably be more, but you can see how it really picks up the imprint there, and then I'm left with a very nice ghost print, which is actually what I prefer to use, although it's kind of nice because you get a very light print off of the first pull. And then when you lay down just the matte gel medium to pick up the rest of the flowers, you can see that it's going to be much darker. But while I'm letting those music pages that I'm picking up that pull with dry, I'm going to go ahead and start tearing out some of these flowers. Now you can cut them or you can use your hands just to tear them out. I prefer to just use my hands because I like the way that it looks. It's a little more organic looking to have those rough edges. I'm not looking for something smooth and round or with hard lines, because you wouldn't really find that in nature, right? I mean, plants typically don't have hard, perfect lines. And so I'm trying to maintain a little bit of the integrity of the idea of a plant there by doing it in that manner. And you can see here, now that those music sheets have had time to dry, I'm pulling this up just in real time so that you can see the print clearly. I love the quality of that. You've got those nice dark colors, that nice dark black on there, but you can still see the music through it, and I think it's just a really neat look. So keeping with my mostly black and white theme, I'm just going to go ahead in and do a few more of the flowers here. I skipped over the majority of it because if you've seen me take one flower print, you've seen a million times, so you kind of know what I'm doing here. And if you're more interested, I do have a full video on that process, but you're getting the gist of it right here. So I did this in white and pulled it up, and I think it's really pretty. It's a nice delicate look on that tissue paper. It can be a little hard to see in collage though. I did one on the music sheet too, which isn't bad, but I like the black ones a lot better. So I decided to change it up this time and use some of that same pink color that I used in the background and pull some flower prints with that. I haven't used this color for the flowers before, but I thought it was going to work really nicely with the colors that I already had down and with that antique look that I was kind of going for there. So here I'm just using some tissue paper to pull up the flowers, and you can see that it's much like the black and white ones, but it's just a nice soft pink, and I thought that would add just a little bit of interest to the piece that I'm about to do. All right, now I'm just tearing out some of those prints that we just made of those flowers, and I'm going to spend a little bit of time working on placement. Again, I don't really have a solid idea in my head. I'm starting to develop one, and I'm thinking I might just want to go around the outside edge with all of these flowers because I think that would be an interesting look. I did one similar to that last week. I don't want to keep creating the same piece over and over again, but that's the beauty of art, is you can use similar ideas and similar images and concepts, but create much different pieces with them, and that's actually how you end up working in series. So I've been doing this series of the florals for a few weeks now, and I like the direction that it's taking, and each one kind of leads me to a new idea. So there will be more of these coming, although I'm going to do something entirely different next week just to change it up. I don't want it to get too boring for you all. So I fiddled around for quite a while trying to get some placement on those, and then I realized I shouldn't do that, and I'm going to just pick one and find out where I want to place it and lay it down. So that's what I did, and again, this is how I work best, just kind of intuitively. I find that when I do start getting a little too fiddly with things, I have to just back off and stop kind of thinking, if that makes sense, and just pick something and go with it, and that always gets me right back on track. So you can see here the flower that I have up in the top left-hand corner is one of the ones that I printed on the music sheets. And because I have similar items in the background, it blends in really nicely. The one in the middle is one that I pulled up on tissue paper, and you can see through it to what I have underneath it. And in that way, these are all going to work together and really blend nicely. Okay, so what I'm doing here, I have a pen and nib that I keep handy for all sorts of different things. What I did now is just go in and scratch out some of the tissue paper on that flower, excuse me. While the glue is still wet, it's pretty movable and you can remove chunks of it. So it's almost like doing a little bit of line work, but you're actually removing tissue paper with that nib, and it was just another way to expose a little bit more of the image underneath. And I'm doing that with this white one too. And you can see here when I zoomed in, it's creating a really nice uneven edge there that looks a lot more organic and like a flower would actually look. And that's a way too that if you've only got a couple of artificial flowers that you're printing, or even real flowers if that's what you're using, you can change the look of it while it's on, while you're putting it on the board or on the canvas, or even beforehand, so that it doesn't look like you're just using the same flower over and over again. You can kind of just cut them differently or rip pieces off of them and make them look like different flowers. Going in here now with some of the white ones. I love the way they look, but you definitely need to have something a little darker underneath them. You can see in the bottom right hand corner there some of the darkness is coming through from what I have underneath, and again here on the one that I'm laying down right now. You really need that because otherwise you're not going to be able to see that white paint very well if it's on a lighter background. Obviously, because, you know, light and light, you're not going to really be able to tell unless you are going for something super subtle that you have to really be up close to see, and there's nothing wrong with that. You could certainly make that decision. But for this, I like the way it's working with the layer underneath and kind of exposing what I've already put down. And you can tell that there are many layers here. And that just makes it a little more interesting and gives it some visual depth. So at this point, I'm kind of trying to figure out, okay, where do I want to go next once I get these flowers on there? Do I want to leave that open square in the center? And I ultimately decided not to do that because that's how my last piece went. And I didn't, like I said, didn't want to keep making the same piece over and over again. So I thought, okay, well, I'm going to mostly cover that up. And then while that's drying, I'm going to take a break and walk away from it and figure out exactly where I want to go for my next step. That's often something that I do if I don't know where to go next, or if I'm having an artistic block or just not, the ideas aren't flowing, I will walk away for a certain period of time. And when I go back, I can usually right away see the direction that I want to take. So that's what I did here. I let everything dry for a couple of hours, and I also went in and did two things. I edged the entire outside in black, but first I trimmed all of that excess off of the edge there, and I just used my X-Acto knife with that. You want to make sure you're using a very sharp knife. One thing that I've discovered is that I'm working on a canvas here. I like to work on cradled boards much better for a lot of reasons. One of which, when I'm trimming, I seem to get a much closer, tighter cut, even if I'm using a brand new sharp X-Acto knife, I just get a closer, more even cut. It always seems like it tears a little bit on the edge when I'm using a canvas. I don't know why that is. You could also not trim the edges. You could continue the collage along down the side of the canvas, and maybe I'll try that in the future. I just really like the look of the painted edges so much. So as you can see here, I've just been going in with my fine micron pen and defining some of the petals of the flower. I wanted to do that especially with the white flowers so that they were a little more visual, like a little more pronounced, and you could see them a little bit better. Because while I do really like that white, it does tend to get lost a bit, and with so much other dark going on around it, your eye is going to be drawn to that instead of to those, and I wanted it to be a little more even and not have all of the attention just immediately taken directly to the black paint. And I think that worked out really nicely. That's something that I did in previous videos as well, if you want to take a look back. So I decided I wanted to put some lettering on this, but not in the way that I typically do it. I had these stencils, and I picked the word flor, which is Spanish for flower, and I'm going to line that up very carefully. What I'm going to do is just trace those, but my plan is to use metallic leaf, excuse me. So I have some copper leaf that I'm going to be using for that, and once I got everything traced out, I'm going to go in with my pen here, and this is a metal leaf adhesive pen. I can't remember if I got that at Michael's or if I ordered it on Amazon, but they're not hard to find. It is a fairly thick tip though, so be careful when you're applying it. I wasn't sure how well it was going to work, but I went ahead and outlined everything first, and I keep lifting it up so that I can see the shine of where it laid down. You can see it much easier on the video than I could in real life when I was doing it. And then I actually even went in and pressed the tip down and flooded the letter a little bit, and then just went ahead and used that adhesive to continue dipping the pen tip in that as I went, and almost used it as like an inkwell. But once I got everything outlined and then filled in with the adhesive, I'm going to take my metallic leaf, and like I said, I used a copper. I have a whole bunch of different colors. I don't use the colored ones as much. I'm typically a huge fan of the copper, though. I just love copper and everything about it. And I was able to just use one sheet for the whole thing there. I pulled off some from the bottom and applied it to the first letter. I'm kind of just burnishing the foil down there a little bit. And then I have a very soft brush that I'm going to brush off the excess here. And I will save that because the crumbs can just be applied in the future and used again. Now you can see on that letter L, I had a little bit of a problem there with the adhesive, and it went outside the lines. I knew it was going to end up being a problem, but at that point there was really not a lot I could do about it. So my plan was to just try to fix it afterwards. And I went in, you saw me go in with my sharp palette knife, and that really wasn't working. But what did end up working was this X-Acto knife, and I thought, well, I'm either going to ruin it right here or get it to work, and it actually did work. You can see here, I'm just very carefully scraping, and this took me a lot longer than it's looking like it's taking here. I went in and just very, very carefully scraped all of the foil off without damaging any of the collage that I had laying down underneath. It was definitely taking a chance, but I thought, well, I can't just leave that big blob of gold there. I'm either going to have to take it off that way or put some paint over top of it to make that line of the L stand out again. And once everything was where I wanted it, I thought those letters needed outlined a little bit just so you could really see them and they could stand out. Excuse me, I thought about doing it with white first, but then I just went in straight with my black Posca pen and did that. And what I'm doing here is going to be hard for you to see on the video, but you can see it up close in person. I'm going in and just adding some vines to the lettering because I thought it was just kind of an abrupt, it was just kind of sitting there plopped on the front of the canvas with no real connection to what was going on underneath. So I thought I would add these vines because they are an organic, it's a plant, a vine is a plant, and it goes along with the theme of the flowers underneath and the word flora on top. And I think it added just the perfect amount of detail to make it interesting to look at. I kind of am wishing I would have gone in and done some dark leaves on the vines. That would have been possibly a little bit better, but I like it well enough the way that it is, and when you're up close to it, you can really see it. So here's the finished piece. I hope you enjoyed this process as much as I did, and thank you all for stopping by. If you haven't had a chance yet, please subscribe to my channel. Give me a thumbs up if you like what you see, and come back next week. I have something a little bit different for you. I hope you all have a great week. Take care.